Yes. Reasons for foreign trade is that most countries may produce a lot more than they can consume, so the surplus stuff, they try to look at where they can sell in the other markets outside their country. Another thing is that excess capacity can also necessitate international trade. Like Uganda produces a lot of power, and this power is, part of it is given to Southern Sudan, part of it is given to Kenya. And also spreading of the risks. Now, instead of concentrating on the market at home, they try to look for other ways of having the market outside the country. That is the spreading of the risks. And also, nationally, or with the national interests, balance of fluctuations of trade. Now, without international trade, the country is not able to earn foreign exchange to pay for the imports. So it is very important that the people of that country are encouraged to produce more for export. Like let's say we cannot consume all the coffee in Kenya we grow, or tea, or horticultural products. So what we do is we look for foreign markets to earn foreign exchange. So when you sell these goods outside, we earn foreign exchange to buy all what we cannot also produce, like plants, heavy machines. Yeah. So when we try to have international trade, it helps us to sell and earn foreign exchange so that we buy what we cannot produce at home locally. Or even if we try to produce, it will be very expensive. Another thing is, some people tend to establish branches in other countries so that it is prestigious. Like last, you see, Nakumatt opened branches in Southern Sudan, in Kigali, in Dar es Salaam. So for prestige purposes, some companies tend to open in foreign countries or other countries so that they look as if they are a multinational company. Foreign earning, I've talked about it. And then also you have to gain access to other markets. You gain access to other markets, and let's say through the KETA, Kenya External Trade Authority, is able also to look for markets for our locally manufactured or produced goods. And that is to earn the country for an exchange. Also, expansion on profit. Maybe the demand for your goods you are producing in the country does not have enough demand. So to expand on your demand, you have to sell outside the country. There are also restrictions in foreign trade. Like let's say when you look at electrical appliances, for us the maximum is 240 volts. Americans 110 volts. So when you are importing from America, whichever is coming from America must have that limit of 240 volts. Or when you are exporting any appliance made here to America, you must have at least 110. Or if you're coming from Japan and going to America, you need at least 110. So technical requirements. Now, because of international trade, we are able to receive new modern things. Technically, we get to know that there are other advanced things in the world. Because of international trade, we are able to access modern things. Now, there are problems in international trade. One of them being the language barrier. Another one is being presentation. There are some areas you are supposed to know what to present your goods in that market. Another thing is, there are some conditions, climatic conditions, whereby require your packaging of goods which are being, let's say, exported, like let's say from Japan to say Chad. They pass through terrain, they pass through very hot conditions. So you must have a way of packaging. Those are some of the problems we encounter. Now, we want to establish a branch, you must have what we call market research. You do your market research, you look at the various facts, like let's say the geographical and social conditions of that country. You look at the transportation network of that country. You look at the political stability of that country. Like, you cannot just trade with a country which is having war, which is not stable politically. Market conditions. How much is allowed home? That is what you are supposed to send back home. Every country must allow foreign companies to send back home their profits after taxation. So that's some of the market conditions you must look at when you are trying to establish a branch in another country. You look at the prices. Are they okay? You look at the local manufacturers. Are they receptive? Do they accept regularly? Do they accept new companies to come from outside to compete with them? Look at the reputation of the competitors. The production capacity, is it low or high? Now, apart from that, we have also to look at the level of taxation in that country. Is it too high? Yes. Now, look at the differences between foreign trade and home trade. Home trade, the advantage is that you use the same currency, you use the same language, you use the same laws. There are no different laws. You don't need a lot of formalities like documentation in home trade. But when it comes to foreign trade, you need import and export license. You need maybe an interpreter or an agent to deal with the Chinese or Japanese. You need to have your local currency changed to foreign currency so that you can buy from outside. You cannot use your local currency to buy what is outside. You must look for hard currency. Another thing is, there's a lot of formalities in, let's say, getting started. Like, you have a lot of documentation, and you have a lot of, let's say, if things are being carried by sea, you have to change from the port to the land. And those are all required documentation. Conditions that you may encounter. Terms of settlement. How are you going to pay? So you see, with the local trade, you don't need those things. But with international trade, you must look at terms. Are you going to do the letter of credit, or are you going to use the bill of exchange to make payments to your exporter or to your supplier from outside the market? Let's look at the managing exports. Some manufacturers send directly to the buyers outside the market in the other countries. So the local manufacturer will just have local sales. Now these agents will have to take over the goods that are theirs and sell and earn as their goods. But otherwise they will have paid the local manufacturer. That's when we talk of exporting direct to overseas buyers. What are the advantages of exporting direct to overseas buyers? You as a manufacturer, you are able to know the buyers. You are able to create rapport, or let's say the trading relations with that buyer. And you can actually make some changes. You can, the terms, when you feel that they are too harsh or too restrictive, you can make them less restrictive. Apart from that, the manufacturer is able to change. Maybe if he has been selling one item, he can even add another line of product. because it depends on the quality you are selling to that buyer outside the country. That is when you are exporting direct to overseas buyers. The disadvantage also of exporting direct to overseas buyers that there's a slow rate of turnover, because you have to wait for that person to sell those goods so that he sends back your proceeds. So you find that for you, you'll be waiting. You're waiting for the cash until he says you cannot continue with your processes. Another thing is that export documentation may only be handled by the persons who are experts. So for you as an exporter, you may need some intermediaries to handle those goods as your agents. You must also look for special packaging. You must also try to advertise in those foreign markets. So that is also becomes cumbersome for you when you are selling directly to the buyers. You must also look into exchange controls. There are some countries which are very strict about exchange, how much to send outside, because they may say we only want necessary things like this, and they can say we need those ones who are dealing with agricultural products. Like if you are importing a tractor, fine. But if you are importing something which is luxurious, we are not giving you the foreign exchange. That is if there is that restrictive measure. Exchange risk also. Like now we have a dollar going for 107. You see, because of COVID-19, we have had those erratic fluctuations of exchange rates. So you find that also you risk when you are selling direct to the overseas buyers. He may have to pay less when your currency goes down against the hard currency. Sometimes you may not have all the information about the buyer, and you may end up losing your products. So the risk of selling to the outside buyer is that you may have very little knowledge about that buyer. And also there's a distance problem. Suppose your goods don't reach the buyer and you're supposed to have them disposed of. You may be forced to travel to that place where you exported the goods to have them disposed of. That is a distance problem, also can inconvenience the exporter. Now that is when you are selling goods directly to the buyers. You are selling without, apart from the experts of taxation, documentation, that is when you are selling direct. But in most cases, the manufacturers prefer selling through some companies or specialists, like the export merchant houses, confirming houses, buying or Indian houses. There are those who are called consignment agents, and there are those who are just only finance houses, which are supposed to be giving the finance to the importers and exporters, but they don't handle goods. So exporting through these companies, you tend to have the risks taken away, because you have to get your local currency, and those ones take over the goods and they handle their risks. Now, export merchants buy goods from the local manufacturers in Kenya and sell them not on behalf of the manufacturer, and sell them as their own goods. So by so doing, the Kenyan manufacturer is having alleviation of the fluctuations and all those documentation of export. The risks are taken away. Now, the advantages of using the export merchant is that the manufacturer will use export merchant house to alleviate the risks or eliminate the risks which are involved in selling in local currency locally. Now, the disadvantage of using export merchants also is that the Kenyan manufacturers tend to get out of touch with the market outside. And that's the reason why it is not good to have the intermediaries. That's all what I got today.